Thank you so much. What a nice group of Jesus people. They're great. Thank you. This place is so honoring, and I want to give a little honor to Annie and Rich and the whole team here, your worship team and your production team. Should we give them all a hand, all the ushers and all of that? So good. Tonight I want to read to you from Mark chapter 6, and we're going to talk about what it means to be happy, because really Jesus comes, and if we can hear it, we can get to happy from here. But I don't think this world gets it. So you're going to be infected with Jesus tonight. And then you'll take it and you'll spread it everywhere. That's just a metaphor that everyone here should understand, right? That it's interesting how influence works. It's almost like we've gotten a 1 year course on the impact that we can have every time we go out the door. Right? That everyone we come in contact with, we can infect with what's in us. And we can almost do it casually. And if it's powerful enough, casual contact turns into dramatic impact. So I'm going to read to you from Mark chapter 6. I found Jesus when some guys on my soccer team, I was just a little guy, some guys on my soccer team, after the game was over, I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and they said, we're going to go to church. And I said, well, I'm not going to church. And they said, no, your mom said that you were going to go with us. And I'm looking at my mom like, what are you doing? She's like, they're going to pick you up and take you, right? So my mom had just come through a divorce, and her life was a mess. My biological father impregnated my mother. I have a twin brother. She was pregnant with the two of us when he said, by the way, I have a girlfriend, and she's pregnant, and I love her instead. So he leaves his pregnant wife to go with his pregnant mistress. And that's how I came into the world. I tell people that I came into the world with a question mark over my head, because his point of view was, I don't even know if that's my kid. Anybody else here, you start this life with a question mark over your head, right? Like you're adopted, or there's some kind of like, how come my dad didn't love me enough to hang around? Can I get an amen from any of the other? Yeah, okay, so you know what I'm talking about. So I walk in to this church, and I thought to myself, these people are way happier than we are. I didn't know why. I didn't even care why. So we just kept going back. After about 6 months, my mom, who had remarried by then, she says to my stepdad, hey, I want you to take the kids tonight. But he was worried about wasting gas. This is back when gas prices were surging to a quarter. You know what I'm saying? Anybody, can I get an amen for the 70s? Everybody's like, that's 25 cents. Anyway, so he decides, my stepdad decides, that he's not going to drive back and forth to this church twice, so he's going to stay. And he sits in the back, and my dad got radically saved. And, yeah. How radically saved, you say? Why don't you say that? Say, how radical? Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3. Well, so radical that when I came home the next week, I came home from school and the television was gone. And I said, Dad, what happened to the TV? He said, we're not going to have that demon box in this house. I'm like, it wasn't a demon box last week. What happened? So, anyway, sometimes we want to please Jesus. Do you know what I mean? So we just start editing randomly. Not going to do a TV, and I won't do movies unless Disney makes them. And then Disney starts doing, okay, I guess I can't do that anymore. And you know what I mean? So I was in Washington, D.C., probably almost 20 years ago. And I was sitting with this old codger. He wasn't a pastor, but he was a Jesus freak. And he says, what does Jesus want from you? And so, it's like, what's the right answer? I don't know the right answer. Oh, I got it. To love God with all my heart, soul, mind, strength, credit card, free time, whatever, and to love my neighbor. He said, no. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know. And he said, turn to John chapter 6. And so I turned to John chapter 6. And there's a story. I'm not going to read it tonight. But it's a story about these disciples, these early followers of Jesus, and they're watching Jesus do miracles. Wouldn't it be cool to do miracles? Well, they thought it was cool, and they look at him and they say, how can we do those works? Which is exactly what I would say. They said, we want to do that. We want to touch blind people and they can see. We want to speak to cancer and it comes out. Maybe some of you don't believe in healing, but I kind of feel like if God can create Jupiter and its rings, he can figure out psoriasis. You know what I'm saying? I think he can do acne if he can do the Milky Way galaxy. That's all I'm saying. If he could do photosynthesis in the simplest of flowers, I think he can figure out how to reverse your depression. I'm just saying, you don't have to be convinced, but I am. So he has me turn to John chapter 6 and read this story where they're saying, we want to do and Jesus says, in the New Living Translation, I can read it to you in this King James. It says, Jesus answered, the work of God is this. Drama. What's he going to say? In the New Living, it says, this is the one work God wants from you. And what's going to follow? If it's the one work, everybody say one. If it's the one work, everybody say one. Okay, it's not two. Did you misunderstand? It's not the two things God wants from you. It's the one. Everybody say one. If it's the one thing, then everything else trickles down from this one thing. That's how that works. So he says, this is the one thing God wants from you, to believe in the one he sent. That's it. They're asking for healing power, and Jesus says, there's just one thing. Say it again. One thing he wants from you, and that's to believe in me. How is that possible? That is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. Because we're supposed to feed the hungry. So there's two. Feed hungry or not feed hungry? You tell me. Okay, feed the hungry. So there's two. And we're supposed to, teach our kids. So there's three. And we're supposed to tithe. You so help me, you better be tithing. There's like 4. Is that 4 yet? 5 or I don't know. Just be nice. I'm running out of things we're supposed to do, but there's a bunch of them. Not really. Not really. This is why when Rich says we're going to do a week on Jesus, I know some dude who's raised in the Episcopal Church goes, we've done that. But this is the whole deal. This is the one thing he wants from you. Hey, God, what do you want from me when my dad is sick and I got a pink slip from work? He wants one thing. Believe. Say like, well, what does that have to do with tithing? Well, what is the problem with tithing? Except you don't believe that it all comes through him. It says about Jesus that he was present at the creation of the earth. The Spirit of the Lord hovered over the water. It's right in Genesis. It's like in the first couple of chapters. Jesus appears in the first few sentences. And you don't think that he can cover your rent, your gas, your food, and channel enough for the kingdom through you. Your problem is not money. Your problem is you don't believe in Jesus. You don't believe. You know. My wife, when she was pregnant with this little girl, was told she had to be on bed rest. She had a at-risk pregnancy. And she was in bed for 5 months before it occurred to me to pray for her. I'm a pastor. What is my problem? What is my problem? I don't believe, Rich. That's my problem. Every day I just have to get up and say, Waymaker, Promise Keeper. I forget all the lyrics. But that is who you are. That is who you are. So the tax guy says, you owe this. And we go, we don't have that. So, Jesus, what are you going to do? Because as one brother taught me, if it's God's will, it's God's bill. You know what I'm saying? Be my partner. Be my partner. We always want God to be our partner in our finances on the debit side. Oh, sure, come on. Huh? But when we're flush, not so much. So tonight I just want to talk about what it means to believe in such a way that you're happy. You know? I brought my daughter here to be with me because I love her company. And the only thing better than being with all of you is being with all of you and having her. And so we just decided at the last minute to do it together. So I said, get a ticket. And she got a ticket. She didn't ask me if I had the resources to cover it. Why? I'm asking why. Because she believes. She believes I have the resources. So when I told her to do it, she did it. And I said, it's going to be great. You're going to love these people. And she didn't say, how do you know? She didn't ask me any questions about who you were. She said, okay. Why? She believes. She believes. It's going to be great, Gabby. And she believes. And everything that I said we were going to do, and it was going to be, we did, and it's been. And that's where happy is. Let me read you from Mark chapter 6. Here's an interesting story. Jesus left, it says, that part of the country, and he returned with his disciples to Nazareth. What is Nazareth? Home. Home, like his people. The next Sabbath, he began teaching in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. Is that good or bad? It's good. Good. That's like, wow. That's what amazement is, yes? I mean, to me, that's what amazement is. It's like, well, didn't see that coming. Amazed. When somebody who's an idiot says something smart, you're like, hey, how about that? Look at the guy, huh? And they asked, where did he get his wisdom and power to perform such miracles? And it says they scoffed. Watch the categories now. He's a carpenter. That is work-related, I believe. So this is when people discount you because of what you do to bring in the bread. If you need this to be happy, Jesus didn't even have the respect of his hometown for how he made his living for 30 years. He's just a carpenter. Poo-poo what I'm doing. And poo-poo is a technical term. It just means to minimize. It's part of my master's degree. And it says, they scoffed, he's just a carpenter. Oh, new category. The son of Mary, no father mentioned. Bastard child. Can you say bastard in this church? Oh, okay, cool. I'm liking it here. But suspect parentage, question mark over his head, just like me. It's like you. Oh, who's his father? And the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon, This is another category. This is the category of he also hangs out with idiots. His brothers and sisters are idiots. Totally in their head. This is why they were amazed. Now we know why they were amazed that Jesus was wise. Because he has this menial job, and he's a bastard child, and his brothers and sisters are all, they're not holy. None of them are in the rabbinical line. They're not being educated either. And it says, they were deeply offended. They were offended. This is classic. You're offended at me. Have you ever had that sensation? And refused to believe in him. It's interesting they even knew that was the question. Interesting. They somehow heard wisdom and started rationalizing why they shouldn't believe in him. When I listen to somebody teach, I don't go, hey, I believe in Rich. I learn from Rich. I appreciate Rich. I'm not going to worship Rich. But they saw something so potent that they wanted to resist believing. And that's the one thing Jesus wants from us. So it says, Jesus told them, a prophet is honored everywhere except in his hometown. And he adds on a little something, and among his relatives in case they don't live in the hometown. I just love the Bible. I love the Bible. So he says it as if you're still in your hometown. And by the way, if you move to Albuquerque and they find you over there, your relatives won't appreciate you in Albuquerque either. It's not geographical. It's relational. Because of their, I'm sorry, what's the word? Yeah. What's the one thing Jesus wants us to do? Believe. So somehow when we don't do this stuff, it just starts backing up the, anyway. Because of their unbelief, he couldn't do any miracles among them, except this is how potent Jesus is, that he establishes a principle that works almost in total for you, and then he proves that he is bigger than even this principle, and says, except to heal a few people, the sick, and he was amazed at their unbelief. And he went from village to village teaching the people, and he called his 12 together and began sending them out 2 by 2. You guys believe in that here, I know. Giving them authority to cast out evil spirits. He told them to take nothing for their journey except a walking stick, no food, no traveler's bag, no money. He allowed them to wear sandals. Thanks, Jesus. This is a test. So he's apparently contemplating, should I let them have shoes? This is how much he wanted to strip away all the stuff we think we need. But not to take a change of clothes. Wherever you go, he said, stay in the same house until you leave town. But if that place refuses to welcome you or listen to you, shake the dust off your feet. You get the idea. When we believe, we start a process. It's like a rare thing. You know what rare means, yes? Rare means it hardly ever happens. Why? Because we don't believe. So what I'm going to describe to you in the next 15 minutes is something that people don't get, not because they can't get it, but because they won't get it until they believe. Rare, precious. When something's rare, it means that you hardly ever see it. And because you hardly ever see it, when you do see it, people will pay top dollar for it. People do anything to be in your presence. Rare. Put those first point up, would you? I'm going to give you 3 rares. The first rare that you start when you believe are the rare undertakings. You start doing rare things. So there's a little nun in Calcutta. She's teaching at a very elite private school. Expensive. Only the rich kids get to go there. I don't know if you've ever been to Calcutta. It's the poorest city on earth, they say. 20 million people live in a city the size of the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. Have you ever been? That's a big airport. But if you put 20 million people there, it's kind of a problem. So this young teacher working with elite kids, you can read her diary. It's for sale. And I read her diary. And she says, Jesus, I want everybody to know how precious you are to me. So I want to go and work with the people that nobody else wants to work with. We call her Mother Teresa. She gave her whole life to work with people that other humans wouldn't even touch. That's an extreme, but every time you believe in Jesus, he starts calling you to rare undertakings. No, what? You're saying you want me to lead a small group. I'm an introvert. I'm not a theologian. Your problem is not your lack of education. Your problem is you don't believe. And if you believe, Jesus will lead you into the next rare undertaking. Never done that before. Never did that before. Didn't know that was in me. I'm like this little kid. My stepdad finds Jesus. He goes crazy, gets rid of the TV, starts making us go to church all the time. I have to go to church 2 or 3 times a week. It's like 5 years later, 6 years later, I'm in a camp, and this guy is preaching. I'm sitting next to my girlfriend. I'm 17 at the time. Holding her hand. And this guy stops in the middle of his talk and said, there's about 400 kids there. There's somebody here that Jesus is calling to be a pastor. And when he said that, it was like a movie started to play in front of me, and I saw myself preaching, and it was just bizarre. And I was too stupid to resist. You know what I'm talking about? I should have thought it through. But he says, if that's you, come up here. So I let go of my girlfriend's hand, and I walk up, stand in front, and these people pray for me. No tingles, no lightning bolts. They pray for me. You're going to be a pastor. I go back to my seat. My buddies are talking about, that was weird. What happened? You know, kind of like, This is what happened. I'm worried about my girlfriend. What's she going to think? So we walk out, and she says when we're alone, she says, so you're going to be a pastor, huh? I said, I guess. I didn't even know what that meant. And she says, I always wanted to marry a pastor. So I married her. Point of clarification. We weren't 17. It's like a couple years later, we got married. But rare undertakings. I was saying yes. I was even out of high school, and I was saying yes to what I was going to be doing in my 50s. All I really had to do was believe. If you believe, if you believe, he'll set you in these things. Oh, you want me to be an usher? You want me to lead worship? You want me to teach these kids? You want me to share my faith at work? You want me to what? You want me to go to counseling and work on a marriage? Never. Rare things. God, you want me to pray for the sick? Where's Rich? Get this man to pray for the sick. When people call me at home and like, Pastor, will you come? I occasionally will say, no. That's your assignment. Don't give me when you finish working, you don't give me your paycheck. Although I wouldn't fight you, but no, you take your own reward. Why would you give me your spiritual reward? You pray for that dude. It's all in you. It's not no seminary makes you approved. But when you get this rare undertaking, what you get is what I'll call an unmasking. This is where people get revealed. You want to be happy? This doesn't seem like happiness. What I read to you from Mark 6 does not seem like happiness. You're saying that if I follow Jesus, my family will struggle with it, with who he's asking me to be? That's right. I mean, it couldn't be any clearer. You're saying my hometown will probably reject me? No, that's not what it says. It doesn't say he'll probably reject you. It says for sure. People will be unmasked. They liked you when you were going along. They liked you when you were doing what everybody else is going to do. They liked you when you weren't a threat. They liked you when you weren't going to the next level. They were pretty comfortable before you started letting your gifts out. You know, your gifts, your assignments make people uncomfortable. When I went home from that camp and I told my pop that God had called me into the ministry, he'd spent his whole life working as a civil servant on an Air Force base. And I told him I was the first one in my family to go to college. I'm 17 years old. I come home. This guy who found Jesus and got rid of the TV, I mean, his own way, he's radical. But when I said, hey, Dad, I got called in the ministry. I'm going to be a pastor. He said to me, kid, you will never make a living with your mouth. Learn a trade. Now, that's not bad advice, by the way. But the enemy was using his counsel to try to bring resistance and give me a reason not to obey. And at that moment, that good man, that good father, was unmasked. And I understood that he was going to be an obstacle from my obedience. I didn't have to dishonor him, but I did have to disregard his opinion. You want to be happy? If you need dad to sign off on it, you may not be happy. If you need rousing applause, if you need a life where no one is resisting you, this is not the life. What he's asking you to do is believe. If you can believe, you're going to be so happy. But you will be betrayed. For sure. You will be attacked. For sure. For sure. Rare assignments, rare undertakings start this cascade of rare unmaskings, but they end with this rare unlocking, where things that you didn't even dream were in you start coming out. You just know stuff you didn't even know. You didn't even know you knew it. You didn't even know you knew it. You didn't even know you could do that. You didn't even know you cared about that. But you start just being able to operate. If you're here and you're not a Jesus person, what I'm saying to you is this world is lying to you. It says, don't go against those people because those people are the key to happiness. Lie. A great assignment, a great endeavor, a great life is often where people go, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. You do it, and then they go, man, I wish I could do that. Man, that's so cool. You know? This is the power. I'll just close by talking about movies. Because you're going to forget everything I said. But I want you to remember to believe in Jesus. And then just keep taking steps in that regard. Say believe. Last thing. I'm going to pick a movie I hope you've seen. But yet, it's hard to pick a movie. Because it could, if it's too old, maybe some of the younger people haven't seen it. If it's too new, maybe some of you haven't seen it. So I'm going to pick one of the Raiders of the Indiana Jones movies, yeah? Wave your hand if you've seen them, yes? I watched the other one with Sean Connery. He passed away. Sean Connery plays Indiana Jones' dad. Wave your hand if you've seen that one, yeah? Okay, so the movie starts with Indy as a kid, and he's looking for this rare thing in these caves, and these people chasing him. He goes don't say spoiler alert because this movie's 20 years old. So he's on this train, falls through this thing, elephant, rhino, snakes coming out of his shirt. Anybody remember any of this? Okay, so then he runs home, takes the thing away. Fast forward, we're 15 minutes in now. Fast forward, he's now a professor, and he's recaptured. He fights the same dudes, years later, for the same crucifix with this, it's an antique. You know, that whole thing? That was a great impersonation. This belongs in a museum. You know, that whole deal. So he does that whole thing, and then somebody comes into the classroom. We're now 20 minutes in. And somebody says, Dr. Jones, we'd like you to go find the cup of Jesus. And he says, you're looking for the wrong Jones. Wave your hand if you remember this. That's my father's obsession. You should talk to him. And the guy says, we already did. We hired him, and he's missing. I just tell you that part of the movie because in the making of movies, they call that the inception. The movie had been going for 20 minutes, and the movie hadn't started. Why hadn't the movie started? Because before that, stuff was just happening. And Indy wasn't engaged. He's like, that's nice. That's not for me. No, thank you. I'm not ready. But every great movie, you can go back and go, that's where it started. It starts right there when he says, my dad. Because Indy didn't care about the cup. Indy cared about his dad. And if he cares about dad, then he'll go through more snakes and rhinos and spiders and danger and bullets and knives. And this moment of inception is where it all starts. I just want to say that because some of you are sitting there going, I wish I would have heard this talk when I was 30. I wish I had heard this talk before I had that divorce. I wish I heard this before I went through that bankruptcy. You don't understand. You don't understand great movies. You don't understand great stories. Great stories always start after a bunch of crap has happened. This is the point of inception where you say on your deathbed, I was doing this and I worked there for 15 years and I went through this divorce and I did this whole thing and I started attending a church with this madman in Yuma. And he's got tattoos and motorcycles and I went one Friday night and I found out I didn't have to do anything but believe. God wasn't asking me to jump through a bunch of hoops. He just asked me to believe. And that started everything. I became a different person. And your grandkids will look at you and go, what? You weren't always like this, Grandpa? You mean, oh yeah, I used to be like that, like that, like that. Really, Grandma? Yeah. I went on a mission trip. I started doing this. I started giving money away. This is the point. This is the point, the inception point of the whole movie is now. Jesus. We want to believe. Come on. He's here. He's here. If you're here, let's just close our eyes. If you're here and you're not a Jesus person, we close our eyes to focus. Focus. It's not a mystical thing. It's a practical thing. I don't want you to pay attention to the looks of other people's face. I don't want you to be going, oh, I wonder, what will she think? You don't know what she's thinking. You don't know what he's thinking. I'm not asking you to be a missionary. I'm not asking you to quit your job. I'm not asking you to feed the poor in Calcutta. I'm asking on a Friday night when you could be a million other places. Do you feel like it's time to believe for more? And all he wants from you is to believe. It'll lead you to other undertakings, rare undertakings. It'll have disappointments, these unmaskings where you're like, oh, I thought, no, it's not right. You'll find out all kinds of stuff, hurtful stuff, tough stuff. By the way, you'll get unmasked too. you'll see that your own selfishness and your own sin, and you just keep throwing stuff off. Yeah, better get rid of that. Better get rid of my pride. Better get rid of my plans. Better get rid of... It's okay. You'll learn to get used to discarding things that you thought were so cool, and you realize they're not helping you. But are you ready to believe? Jesus, we want to believe. We want to believe. I want to believe. I want to believe that you can funnel money through me that I can't even imagine. I want to believe, God, that I'm going to give more money away than I ever thought I would make. Some of you need to believe that Jesus gives a rip about your finances. I want to believe, God, that you're going to sustain my family when I can't be with them. I want to believe, God, that you're bigger than the structures in this country. That after I've cast my vote, you're going to have a say too. I want to believe, God, that you can help me sustain some relationship, a marriage, for longer than I can sustain it. I want to believe that you can help me in this. I want to believe that you can heal the sick. I want to believe that you can cast demons out. I want to believe that my kids can grow up godly. I want to believe. If you have something you want to believe, you're ready for it, you just raise your hand. May this be an inception, the beginning of the whole movie, of the whole thing, the whole story. Starts now. Starts now. This is when the trouble starts. This is when the excitement starts. This is when the adventure starts. Everything else was happening, but now we found something we care about. No time for suicidal thoughts. No time for selfish thoughts. We're on an adventure now. Start the movie, Jesus. Start the story. Start it. That we could believe. That we could believe. That we could believe. That we could believe.